Will this pass the VA appraisal? I get asked that question so many times when I'm working with my VA buyers, and we're getting to that point whether we're going to write an offer, we're walking through the house, or they're waiting for the appraisal to come back. That's always the big question. And today I'm going to show you two houses that both passed the appraisal from the VA. The 1950s house on one hand had one condition on it, was really easy to solve. And the other one, built in 2023, it had its own issues, but had no conditions whatsoever. And here's the catch, and I bet you didn't see this coming, is that both of these appraised over contract price. In this video, I'm going to show you what a VA appraiser is looking for, what they're not looking at, and why you shouldn't pass up on some homes that maybe need a little bit of work on the surface, because there's a really good chance, a really strong chance, that the VA appraiser will skip right over any sort of work that actually needs to be done to the home. Because why? The VA appraiser is looking for safety issues today. They're not doing a full-blown inspection. My name is George. I've been selling real estate here in St. Louis for the last 12 years. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I've helped a lot of VA buyers over the last 12 years buy real estate here in St. Louis. And I've used the loan myself for purchase, for refinance, for cash out refinance. It is one of the best loan products on the market that you could possibly use. And if you're a veteran and you're afraid to use it, you shouldn't be, because you have one of the best tools in your toolbox that you could possibly have as a buyer. This one here is house number one, built in 2023. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. And an unfinished basement. If you're a first-time home buyer, that's a little hint for you that you should be checking out homes with unfinished basement. And really, that's a huge value add here. It was for my client. Now, just to sidetrack briefly before I go into what the appraiser did at this property and didn't do, is that if you're looking at homes and you want to add value, buying a house in an area that expects finished basements, and the house that you're buying has an unfinished basement, that's basically an instant equity opportunity, because you can go in there and, for material cost, do it yourself over the next 5 years or so, have a completely finished basement, and increase your equity. Comps for my client on this one ranged from $315 as is up to $320, and then all the way up to $350,000, $360,000 in the same subdivision. So it was a huge value add opportunity here in the St. Louis market down in Cedar Hill. And quite frankly, where are you able to do that at? And so it takes a keen eye. Originally, he was going to buy a house that was 1,100 square feet with a finished basement. And so they would have had 2,100, 2,200 square feet of finished space. But I told him, hey, let's go check out this one. It's closer to where you want to be. It's bigger on the main floor, and I'm fairly confident that a VA appraiser is going to appraise this with no issues. And so he walked into this home with over $10,000 of equity on its face and a clean VA appraisal. Now, here's the thing. There could have been a couple hangups. When you're looking at these pictures, you could see in the basement that there's several cracks all the way around the foundation. And now check out these pictures here. This is actually of the outside. And so you can see what's similar here is that they have the same types of cracks on this foundation as the neighbor's house does right next door on both sides of the house, because these homes were all built by the same builder at the same time. And so I called my cousin, who's actually a foundation contractor, and I said, hey, I have a question for you. What I'm looking at based on the inspection suggests that there's moisture intrusion, but when I was at the house, it was raining and there's no moisture coming in, and it had been raining for a while, and that week the ground was pretty saturated from previous rain, but I didn't see any moisture. I have a question for you. Could it be from the forms that were used in the water ratio in the mix to cause these small cracks all throughout, and they're evenly dispersed all throughout the entire foundation? And on top of that, the same marks are on the inside as they are the outside. After looking at it, he said he really doubted that there would be any sort of moisture issue and that you would have a problem with an appraiser when they came through the property. So not only did the VA appraiser never call us or the listing agent and say, hey, we got an issue, we have a condition, that never actually happened. Here's what happened. He walked the property, took his pictures, ran his evaluation, and came back with a higher price than what we were actually under contract for. So as a VA borrower, then what can you do? As long as the seller is willing, here's what you can do. You can actually raise your price and finance your closing costs. So that's what my client did. So not only is he walking in with equity in 2025, where that's really challenging to do, I don't care what market you're in, unless you're on one of the coastal markets right now that are experiencing some hardship. But here in St. Louis, it's still really hard to get equity in a house, especially a brand new home. And he was able to do that and finance his closing costs and only bring in $2,000 to closing. So that's VA buyer house number one, huge success. He's super happy. And he didn't have any of the stress that would be typically associated with someone that doesn't really know what they're doing. And maybe they would guide him away from the VA loan or guide him away from that house because of those cracks. Now, home number two was built in the 50s. VA buyer number two, he was an older gentleman, and he hadn't bought a house in almost 20 years. So I walked him through the entire process, and when we walked the home, I pointed out things that I thought could be issues. And I'm going to show you in this inspection report that there is mold underneath the sink. That's usually a red flag for a VA appraiser. There were peeling paint on the outside. There's the peeling section on the air duct, which could have been associated with asbestos. Now, the inspector, our inspector, the one that we paid for, the one that your buyer's agent should be telling you, hey, you need to pay for an inspection, he flagged all of these items and we worked to negotiate it. Now, there's a kind of a big issue that almost blew this deal up for us, and I'll tell you about that in a second with this contract with buyer number two. But the VA appraiser came through and he didn't flag the mold. He didn't flag the peeling paint on the outside, and didn't flag the exterior trim on the basement door, and he didn't flag the inside of the house where there's a couple sections of peeling paint in the basement. So what that tells you is that the VA appraiser, they're not looking as hard as you think they are. They want to make sure there's no major red flags, safety concerns, and then also they want to make sure that all the systems are in a functional operational status, and all of them are in a working order. The roof, the HVAC, the water heater, the foundation, the plumbing, and the electric are all in good working order. He went through and tested all of that. Now, here's the thing that kind of blew up our deal momentarily. The VA appraiser, the first time in 12 years, he got the job done in a day. So what happens when they get your appraisal done and tell the listing agent, hey, I'm all done, there's no conditions except for, well, actually there is one condition, it's the furnace, which was really easy for the seller to solve. He had the furnace serviced, he was done, it was ready to go for us, and we had the appraiser back out there, and we had a past appraisal with no conditions, and this one actually appraised over $15,000, and he did not elect to finance his closing costs. However, he did walk in with $15,000 of equity. But here's why that kind of blew up our deal. It kind of ruined our ability to negotiate based on the unknowns. See, I like to tell sellers and agents that, look, I have a pretty good idea of what to expect from a VA appraisal. So when they don't do the things that I expect them to do, it can kind of blow up your deal. And I expected a 5 to 7 day, which is really normal. That's how deal number one, it took 3 weeks to get that appraisal back. Deal number two, that only took a day to get it back from the time it was ordered. The appraiser went and looked at the property, wrote his report, and it came back $15,000 over with one condition on it, which was the furnace, and was resolved. Now, that kind of ruins our ability to negotiate for all the other items within the inspection. So here's how we approach that afterwards. We then used the ability to go after the occupancy items, and the occupancy did actually flag several of those items, and the mold under the sink was flagged as well. So the point here is to show you that you shouldn't be afraid of a VA appraisal. You shouldn't be afraid of a VA loan. You as a veteran should not be afraid to use your benefit, your entitlement, because you earned it. Like, you legitimately earned it, and you shouldn't be afraid to use it just because your agent doesn't have any experience with it, just because a seller is scared or is unfamiliar or is afraid that the VA appraisal is going to come in low, there's going to be conditions. Don't let people tell you, hey, don't use this product, because I have many veterans that I've worked with over the last 12 years, and they have all successfully bought homes with the VA appraisal. Have some of them come up with conditions? Of course. Have some of them appraised lower than the contract price? Of course, that's happened. And there are ways to negotiate through that. In this case, though, there are two really good examples for you, the buyer. If you're thinking about buying your first VA, using your first VA loan, two really good examples for you to go and say, hey, I know that I can use my VA loan, and I need to find a qualified expert, a qualified buyer's agent, a qualified lender that I talk about in another video on what to actually look for. And you should use your loan product. If you would like any more information about the VA loan, the process, man, drop them in the comments. Like, subscribe, let me know how I can help. What information would you like as a first-time or repeat VA home buyer, or even a VA seller, what you should expect for that process and how to use your VA loan to own a home and buy a home at the same time.